All right, welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unraveling the absolute shocker that was the 1988 crash of Air France Flight 296. Picture this. It's supposed to be a monumental day for aviation, right? A highly publicized, massive public debut for a brand new aircraft. But instead of a triumph, it turned into a completely unexpected and entirely televised disaster. So, let's dive into the overarching mystery here. When a state-of-the-art, supposedly uncrashable plane goes down on its very first public demonstration flight, where exactly does the fault lie? I mean, was it a catastrophic hidden system failure from the manufacturer, or was it human error right there in the cockpit? Today, we're going to look closely at the facts, dig into the data, and weigh the testimonies to figure out exactly what happened. Section 1. A cutting-edge debut, the launch of the Airbus A320. To really understand this crash, we have to start with the massive hype surrounding this aircraft. The A320 wasn't just another passenger jet. It was designed to fundamentally revolutionize commercial aviation. This was Airbus's massive gamble to leapfrog their longtime American rival Boeing. And the secret sauce? A core technology called fly-by-wire. Before this, jets relied on physical, mechanical connections between the pilot's controls and the plane's moving parts. Fly-by-wire changed that entire relationship. The pilot essentially flies the computer, and then the computer flies the aircraft. It was designed specifically to prevent dangerous maneuvers, literally giving the computer the ability to override human inputs to stop a pilot from making a fatal error. Section 2. Disaster at Habsheim Airfield. A celebratory flight turns fatal. Let's look at the afternoon of June 26, 1988. The timeline leading up to this flight was, frankly, incredibly rushed. The flight plan preparation by the Air France staff didn't even start until a mere 48 hours before takeoff. By 2:30 p.m., the plane took off from Basel-Mulhouse Airport, carrying 130 passengers, a mix of journalists, contest winners, and even kids. And the whole transit to the Habsheim Airshow, it was scheduled to take just 5 minutes. Now, here's the real kicker. Captain Michel Asselin, who is actually one of Air France's most distinguished pilots and the head of their A320 training, planned a breathtaking flyover for the airshow crowd at just 100 feet. But, as investigators would later point out, that was a direct violation of the 500-foot national safety regulations for those kinds of maneuvers. He was basically trying to show off the plane's incredible low-speed stability at a dangerously low altitude. And then things go terribly, terribly wrong. The cockpit voice recorder captured the exact panicked moment from Captain Asselin where he shouts, "Take off, go around, power." That was the terrifying split second he realized a dense forest was directly in his flight path at the end of the airfield. He desperately jammed the engines to full power and pulled back on the controls, fully expecting the aircraft to soar upwards. But honestly, it was just too late. Despite his desperate maneuvering, the aircraft slammed into the trees. The 40-foot-tall canopy completely sheared off the right wing. The plane crashed deep into the forest and instantly erupted into a massive fireball, with all 130 people still strapped into their seats. Miraculously, the main fuselage stayed largely intact, but a deadly fire rapidly started consuming the cabin. Section 3. Was it pilot or plane? The high-stakes investigation begins. So, the wreckage is literally still smoldering on live television, and Airbus is staring down an absolute PR disaster. Lead investigator Claude Bichet had to figure out fast, did this brand new computerized marvel fail, or did an expert pilot make an unforgivable mistake? The core conflict really boils down to the captain's testimony versus the cold, hard facts from the black box. The captain insisted his instruments showed him safely at 100 feet, and that the engines simply ignored his command for power. But the flight data recorder, it told a very different story. It showed the plane was dangerously low at just 30 feet, and that the engines spooled up exactly as they were designed to. Captain Asselin, he firmly stood his ground, believing the plane failed him. Let's break down his defense. He insisted his barometric altimeter gave a false reading of 100 feet. He claimed the highly accurate digital radio altimeter was unreadable, basically arguing that pilots can't effectively fly by reading numbers. When they asked him why he didn't hear the automated voice blaring the altitude drop, 50, 40, 30, he claimed those warnings were totally inaudible over the headsets. And finally, he pointed to an old Airbus document suggesting the engines could suffer from stagnation at low altitudes, which is why he felt they failed to accelerate when he demanded thrust. But, and it's a big but, comparing those claims directly against the flight data recorder reveals the objective truth. The data detected absolutely zero mechanical failures. None. As for the engine stalling, the data showed they spooled to 84% thrust, which is nearly full power, within 5 seconds, right before hitting the trees. And the altimeter error? Well, the cockpit voice recorder proved the control tower provided the correct pressure setting, and the crew actually inputted it properly. The machine performed exactly the way it was programmed to. Section 4. A fatal chain of errors. How human decisions doomed Flight 296. Since the investigation proved the plane was actually working perfectly, we have to trace the cascading human decisions that doomed this flight. First off, because this tiny airfield wasn't even in the plane's navigation database, they had to locate it visually, and they spotted it way too late. Second, to get down to 100 feet in time, they completely rushed their descent. Third, the ground wasn't even gathered by the paved runway they had planned for. They were by a shorter, adjacent grass runway. So the pilot adjusted and lined up there instead. And finally, to prevent the computer from automatically speeding the plane up during this low-speed stunt, Captain Aslan made the fatal choice to disconnect the autothrottle. Because of that incredibly rushed descent, and without the autothrottle managing their energy, the plane didn't just drop to the 100 feet they planned on. No, it plummeted to a shocking 30 feet above the ground. They were essentially skimming the earth in a massive commercial jet. And shockingly, neither pilot in the cockpit seemed to even notice how dangerously low they had gotten. To make matters worse, as the plane crossed the airfield at just 30 feet, its speed had bled off to an incredibly slow 112 knots. In aviation, this is known as alpha max. The aircraft was flying as slowly as a commercial A320 possibly can without just dropping out of the sky. So they were low, they were incredibly slow, and they had absolutely zero margin for error. But we can't just put this all on the pilot. We have to talk about the systemic planning failures that totally set these guys up for disaster. Get this, the flight package was thrown together at the last minute. The maps provided to the pilots were literally just black and white photocopies, and those cheap photocopies completely omitted the forest at the end of the wrong runway they had lined up on. The crew received absolutely zero formal briefing from Air France staff before taking 130 people up into the air. Captain Nisseline even testified that when he looked ahead, he expected to see low bushes, not a solid wall of 40-foot trees. Section 5. The final verdict. Uncovering the truth behind the crash. So how does this all come together? Remember the captain's insistence that the engines took way too long to spool up when he finally saw the trees? Well, investigators analyzed the actual audio track from a spectator's video camera. They proved that the delayed engine sound the pilot heard was perfectly standard. Jet engines starting from a low idle take time to spin up. As investigators noted, when you go from idle to full power, nothing happens for a few seconds and then the power kicks in. That was totally normal. The reality is, the pilot just commanded the power way too late to overcome the massive drag of flying at 112 knots, a mere 30 feet off the ground. Tragically, this failure to respect basic aviation rules, combined with just sloppy, rushed preparation, cost 3 passengers their lives. While most people did manage to escape, 2 adults and a 7-year-old girl named Marama Baleri, who was trapped by a folded seatback during the chaotic evacuation, perished in the smoke and flames. It's a truly sobering reminder of the immense human stakes behind simply following the rules. To wrap this explainer up, we really have to ask ourselves one final critical question. Did the sheer confidence in an uncrashable, highly computerized plane ironically cause an expert pilot to just ignore the basic, unbending rules of the sky? It definitely forces us to think about how we interact with automation today. When we rely on computers to save us from our own mistakes, do we sometimes forget how to pilot the ship ourselves? Think about that next time you rely entirely on technology to keep you safe. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive, and keep seeking to understand the systems that run our world.
For more crash investigations, subscribe to the channel, like this video and share it. Tell us what to investigate next in the comments. Thank you for watching, and stay safe.
Thank you for watching the Flight Decoder. Subscribe for more authentic aviation investigations. Like this video, share it, and leave your thoughts.